The Korean Peninsula, once unified for centuries, was tragically divided after World War II. It became a pawn in the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. The 38th parallel cleaved the nation in two. The Soviet Union backed Kim Il-sung in the north. A former guerrilla fighter, he rose to prominence. Installed as leader of the DPRK in 1948, Kim consolidated power with Soviet support and suppression of rivals. He established a one-party state. The division was a tragedy for the Korean people. The Cold War rivalry pushed the Koreas further apart. Kim aimed to reunify Korea under his rule by force. This set the stage for the Korean War. On June 25, 1950, North Korean forces, equipped with Soviet tanks, launched a surprise attack across the 38th parallel. The invasion marked the beginning of the Korean War. The North Korean army captured Seoul. The United States intervened under the United Nations. China entered the war supporting North Korea. The war was brutal, with intense fighting and massive casualties. The war ended in 1953 with an armistice, but no peace treaty. The two Koreas remained divided by a heavily fortified DMZ. The war solidified Kim Il-sung's power and militarized North Korean society. The aftermath of the Korean War saw North Korea devastated and heavily reliant on aid from the Soviet Union and China. Kim Il-sung, leveraging the sacrifices of the war, embarked on a massive Reconstruction Program. He focused on rebuilding the country's infrastructure and industrial base. Under Kim's leadership, North Korea made significant strides in its recovery. The country implemented a centrally planned economy, emphasizing heavy industry and military production. Education and healthcare were provided free of charge, albeit under strict state control. By the 1960s, North Korea had emerged as an industrialized socialist state boasting impressive economic growth. However, this progress came at a cost. Kim Il-sung, having eliminated his political opponents during the war, further consolidated his power, establishing a totalitarian regime. He cultivated a pervasive personality cult, portraying himself as the infallible great leader. Dissent was ruthlessly suppressed, and the people were subjected to constant surveillance and indoctrination. Central to North Korea's political and social development was the ideology of Yuche. Formulated by Kim Il-sung, Yuche translates to self-reliance. It emphasized Korean nationalism, self-sufficiency, and the leadership of the Workers' Party of Korea. Yuche became the state ideology, permeating all aspects of life in North Korea. It promoted the idea that the Korean people were masters of their own destiny and could achieve true socialism through their own efforts. However, Yuche also served to justify the regime's authoritarianism and isolationist policies. The principles of Yuche had a significant impact on North Korea's domestic and foreign policies. The country pursued a policy of economic self-reliance, minimizing trade and interaction with the outside world. It also developed a strong military, viewing it as essential for defending against perceived threats from the United States and South Korea. Section 5. Dynastic Succession, from Kim Il-sung to Kim Jong-il. In the 1970s, Kim Il-sung began grooming his son, Kim Jong-il, as his successor. This marked the beginning of a hereditary dictatorship, unprecedented in the communist world. Kim Jong-il, known as the Dear Leader, gradually assumed important positions within the Workers' Party of Korea and the military. Kim Il-sung's death in 1994 plunged North Korea into mourning. Kim Jong-il, inheriting his father's mantle, officially assumed leadership of the country. However, he faced a myriad of challenges, including a devastating famine, a crumbling economy, and increasing international pressure over North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Kim Jong-il's rule was characterized by a continuation of his father's policies, with a particular focus on strengthening the military and developing nuclear weapons. He maintained the personality cult surrounding his father and himself, ensuring the Kim family's grip on power remained absolute. The transition to Kim Jong-il marked the consolidation of dynastic rule in North Korea. Section 6. The Arduous March, Famine and Economic Hardship. The mid-1990s witnessed a catastrophic famine in North Korea, known as the Arduous March, or the March of Suffering. A combination of factors, including economic mismanagement, natural disasters, and the loss of Soviet aid, led to widespread food shortages and mass starvation. The North Korean government, initially reluctant to acknowledge the severity of the crisis, struggled to cope with the disaster. International aid agencies were allowed limited access to provide humanitarian assistance. The famine had a devastating impact on the North Korean people, with estimates of deaths ranging from hundreds of thousands to millions. The Arduous March exposed the failings of North Korea's centrally planned economy and its vulnerability to external shocks. It also highlighted the government's prioritization of military spending over the well-being of its citizens. The famine left a lasting scar on North Korean society, shaping the lives of those who endured it. Section 7. Kim Jong-un's Rise and Nuclear Ambitions. Following the death of Kim Jong-il in 2011, his youngest son, Kim Jong-un, assumed power. Relatively unknown and in his late 20s, Kim Jong-un's rise was met with uncertainty both domestically and internationally. However, he quickly consolidated his authority, purging potential rivals and reinforcing the personality cult surrounding his family. Kim Jong-un continued his father's policy of prioritizing military development, particularly North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Under his leadership, North Korea conducted numerous missile tests and nuclear detonations, defying international sanctions and raising tensions with the United States and its allies. Kim Jong-un's pursuit of nuclear weapons is seen as a deterrent against foreign intervention and a bargaining chip to ensure the survival of his regime. However, it has also come at a high cost, further isolating North Korea from the international community and hindering its economic development. Section 8. A Hermit Kingdom, North Korea's isolation. North Korea has long been dubbed the Hermit Kingdom due to its isolationist policies and strict control over information entering and leaving the country. The government tightly restricts its citizens' access to the outside world, limiting travel, communication, and exposure to foreign media. This isolation is enforced through a combination of physical barriers, such as the heavily guarded border with South Korea, and strict censorship. The government controls all media outlets, internet access, and communication networks, ensuring that only approved information reaches the population. North Korea's isolation has profound consequences for its people. It limits their access to information, opportunities, and perspectives from the outside world. It also hinders the country's economic development and perpetuates its dependence on foreign aid. Section 9. The Human Cost, Human Rights in North Korea. North Korea has faced widespread condemnation for its human rights record. The government's totalitarian control over all aspects of life has resulted in systematic violations of fundamental freedoms. These violations include arbitrary detention, torture, forced labor, and severe restrictions on freedom of speech, assembly, and religion. The North Korean government operates a vast network of political prisons, known as where perceived enemies of the state are sent without trial. Inmates in these camps endure horrific conditions, including forced labor, starvation, torture, and summary executions. The international community has repeatedly called on North Korea to improve its human rights record. However, the government denies any wrongdoing and continues to prioritize its own survival and the maintenance of its power structure over the well-being of its people. Section 10. The Future of North Korea. Challenges and uncertainties. The future of North Korea remains uncertain. The country faces numerous challenges, including its nuclear ambitions, economic stagnation, human rights violations, and the ever-present possibility of renewed conflict with South Korea. The international community continues to grapple with how to engage with North Korea and address the threats it poses. Sanctions, diplomacy, and humanitarian aid have all been employed with varying degrees of success. However, a lasting solution to the Korean Peninsula's division and North Korea's nuclear program remains elusive. The North Korean people, meanwhile, endure the hardships imposed by their government and the legacy of its policies. Their resilience and spirit of survival offer a glimmer of hope for a brighter future. However, the path towards a more peaceful, prosperous and free North Korea is fraught with obstacles.